What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of OTA Clips. I'm Griffin Senyek, joined by my co-host of Outside the Arena, Mac Rommel, and today another special guest, Devin Bernstein, back on the channel once again. And today we're going to be talking about his Philadelphia Eagles. They made a blockbuster trade today, trading Carson Wentz, their former franchise quarterback now, to the Indianapolis Colts for a 2021 third-round pick and a 2021 conditional second-rounder that can improve to a first rounder based on Wentz's playing time for this year. So, Devin, we're going to get right into it. We're going to start with you. As an Eagles fan, obviously, what are your thoughts on this trade, potentially as a fan, but also looking at it, from the organization's perspective and what they got back?
As a fan, it's sad. I guess one thing I will say is it wasn't Wentz who won the Super Bowl. So I think had Wentz stayed healthy and won that Super Bowl, I think this might be a different situation, obviously, with his play, but just how the feeling is, because that connection of that season, which is obviously super important to Eagles fans still, as they make it clear, the connection to that season is definitely still there. And I don't know if it's 100% Wentz, because he wasn't the guy who won it. He wasn't the hero. I mean, as much as he put us in a position to get there, he didn't literally win the Super Bowl for us. So, that's one thing. So I guess there's a bit of sadness there, because he's he's been the quarterback of my team for 5 years, and I really wanted him to succeed. I think he's a really, 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 he tries absolutely hard, so hard. You can't question his heart. But at the same time, there is just something that was so wrong last year that, there have been issues in the past. There are arguments you could make. He was slightly overrated. And as much as I would have disagreed with you before this season, I have absolutely no place to say that he was really who he looked like that MVP season.
Yeah, totally. Especially as a Cowboys fan, I'm pretty happy about this. But Carson Wentz, yeah, you're getting a guy who was once an MVP caliber quarterback. He took a step down this year, and you look at his stats really overall: 7 interceptions, 3 straight seasons. But I think the turning point this season was really the interceptions. They had a losing record. It was 3-8-1, I believe. And at that point, through those games, he had 15 interceptions. A career high, and not even playing the entire season. I think that's what really turned the Eagles and the organization to lead. I don't want to have Carson Wentz on this team. I need to get him out of here. And for Carson Wentz, he kind of felt like he was disrespected, and he wanted to get out of there, especially after the benching and eventually starting of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of a lot of factors that played into this one. I think, I've never been, Devin can attest to this. I've never been a huge Wentz guy. I've kind of always thought he was overrated. But I think, in past years, you look at the team that's been around him. Obviously, he's never really had the weapons, but at least he had that O-line, with a ton of guys who are, former Pro Bowlers and whatnot. This year, those guys weren't there. They were all injured. They were, configuring new O-lines every week. And I think that really played a big factor into this. I just don't think he had the weapons and or the O-line. It just was like he was alone out there, basically. And I think he was just put in a position to fail. And, I think right now it is the state of the Eagles organization that also makes this trade kind of necessary for them. They are trending towards a rebuild right now. That's what it appears to be. His salary is, huge. They're going to have a huge cap hit this year of like $33 million or something like that. And, they're looking to move past that. They're looking to get a fresh start. Potentially, Jalen Hurts might be the future guy. You've heard they might bring in some competition for him. We'll see there what happens. But, it's a fresh start. They're going to be able to rebuild. They're going to not have to worry about, having to pay Wentz, having to have him back there every year. And they're just going to be able to reset. They got some draft capital now, and they'll be able to move on. Obviously, I think his tenure in Philadelphia will be looked on in a positive manner. I don't think any Eagles fans have any ill will towards Carson Wentz. Probably some disappointment that things quite didn't work out and that he only was the quarterback for 5 years, because it really looked for a while that he would be there for potentially 10 plus seasons. So kind of a shocker, but makes sense with the way the Eagles are headed right now.
Yeah, 100%. And as you said, rebuild. That's what they're headed towards right now. You got draft capital, a third this year, and what most likely will be a first next year. And then going back to what you said, competition for Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position. And I bet Devin could attest to this. I'm not sure what you would want. are you going to be looking for a quarterback at the 6th overall pick? That's kind of what the Eagles are kind of leading us to kind of think and question. Is that going to be a move here? Are you going to try and get weapons for Jalen Hurts, see what he could do, and then if it doesn't pan out, then you go and get your guy of the future. But Devin, for you, what do you think the Eagles should do from here?
I mean, I've seen Howie Roseman operate this team, and I know him to an extent, and I know how he's going to see this, and he's going to say to himself, if Jalen Hurts is our guy, we go out and we build the O-line, we build receivers, and we build corners, and we worry about the rest. This has generally been his MO. And sorry, by receivers, I just mean pass catchers. And I think I am sold on Jalen Hurts. I don't think there's we're at the point where you can be like, oh, Jalen Hurts is definitely the guy. I understand the question marks there, but I do like what I've seen. I think he's going to be a good starting quarterback. But I wouldn't trust me because I believed in Carson Wentz for quite a while. So, I think that's the decision how he's going to come to. I agree that it's weird that it's like the instant thing was they're going to look to bring in another quarterback. And I think the 6th overall pick, I think all 4 of the top QBs, I think they can be really, really good starting quarterbacks, but I just don't think that's where the need is, considering this is an aging roster. This is an extremely injury prone roster, and especially this is a becoming a less and less talented roster. I mean, Brandon Graham is 33. He's good. He's very good, but he's 33. Fletcher Cox is amazing, but he's making like $30 million a year. I'm not joking. And he's also 29. Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson are old and injury prone. Jason Kelsey is old. He's not that good anymore, and he might retire. The receiving core is a mess. Zach Ertz is probably on his way out. Darius Slay looked a bit washed up this year. I mean, is there really one piece you can look at this roster and say, this guy is going to be here for the next 5 years and be elite? I guess Cox, but by the end of that, he's going to be about 34. But on a more positive note, I think either the pick we get from Indianapolis ends up being a top half of the 2nd round or a late 1st round pick would probably be my guess as of right now. But honestly, I don't know how much I believe in Carson Wentz at this point. But honestly, I think you got to give Howie a chance here. And I think a lot of Eagles fans, rightfully so, have said Howie has not drafted well. So why does he think he's going to draft well here? And that's valid. But ultimately, he drafted enough to build a Super Bowl caliber roster, and he was smart financially, made smart moves. And I think this is the window. I think Hurts, you got 3 years of a rookie contract. I think you have this offseason to bring in young talent. I think you have the next 2 off seasons after that as much as the cap hit's going to be pretty lethal this year for Wentz, I trust Howie to get under the cap and build a roster that can just play. And then once that happens after the season, you don't have to pay him a cent ever again. So as much as that's a stupid cap move for this year, it can be helpful where it could be. I mean, ideally, I'm sure this is what Howie is thinking is this is going to be a young roster with a lot of young talent and picks. You got a young running back, hopefully a good young quarterback. And then you've got Rager, who I still think is going to be a very good receiver. You've got some other options in the slot. I hope we draft a one receiver this year. You can rebuild the line. I am actually a bit less concerned about the line than other people. I think it's really actually going to come down to the defense. And I think we need to, just the defense was always so hit or miss under Jim Schwartz and Peterson. And I just don't, it's going to be really interesting to see. So.
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of points key there. And I think, the one that really stuck with me was the idea that outside of Cox right now, they really don't have any guys that you can look at and say, these guys are franchise building blocks. We can build around them right now. And I think that's just the thing with their roster and how it's built right now is that it's just going to take time. And I think that's why with the 6th pick, I don't know if it's wise to look at a quarterback when you got Jalen Hurts, a guy who, you haven't even, when he's played great. And look at what he was playing with, a banged up O-line, basically no talent at the wide receiver position. Why don't you give this guy some talent, give him, some healthy O-lineman back and see what happens? I don't think it's, if the season's a mess, you're going to be able to get some more quarterbacks next year. It's not like, you're never going to be able to get a good quarterback again. Obviously, if there's a guy who you really like and who is your guy on the board outside of Trevor Lawrence and he's there at the 6th pick, maybe you take him. But if that other, if that number 2 guy outside of Trevor Lawrence isn't there, I'm not so sure you take a quarterback here when you're going to have wide receivers like Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith potentially on the board. There's a lot of ways they can go with that pick. They can look defense even if they want to. They could trade down. I mean, they could do a whole bunch of stuff. And I think that's the key, is just getting guys to be building blocks around for this draft. Free agency, I don't expect them to be too active. They're going to be, hurting with that cap. But then, like you said, once contracts go on, they're going to be able to, explore different options. They're going to have some of these older guys like the Jason Peters, like not saying he's retiring, but like a Lane Johnson. Those guys will start to fade out, start to retire, maybe get traded. So money's going to come available, and then you're going to be able to sign new guys and replenish. So I think this upcoming year for the Eagles, the draft is going to be the key for them this offseason. Let those guys develop, give Jalen Hurts a nice shot in the starting quarterback position, and see what happens in the next offseason. Regroup, sign some free agents, and draft again. Hopefully you'll have the Colts first. You'll have 2 firsts, and you're going to be in a good spot. I think the Eagles are in a good spot. They got a lot of veterans that they could potentially move for more draft capital. So, expect the Eagles to be busy. I think the trading market is going to be where they're most active this offseason.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the main thing that a lot of people are probably thinking of right now, and they're automatically saying the Eagles lost this trade. And that's just because right now it may not be looking the best. As you said, both of you, the cap space, they're not going to be active in free agency this year. A lot of old players, but you got 2 picks now, one that will most likely become a first, and I'm expecting to have Carson Wentz, that is, to have a lot of snaps in Indianapolis. I believe it's at least 75% of the snaps for that to turn to a first, and I think he'll get there. I don't think he'll get injured, especially going behind that great offensive line that only gave up 19 sacks compared to the Eagles' 65 last year. But overall, this is going to take a few years, and I think that's what Eagles fans know, and a lot of the NFL in general fans do not know. It's going to take time, and it's not going to be something instant. If you hold on to Carson Wentz, that's a burden on your shoulder, and you're still wondering what you have to do. You got rid of him, and now you can look forward to the future. You could draft some guys, young guys, who could develop under some of these great leaders. You mentioned Fletcher Cox. You have Lane Johnson, all these guys who were once great, may not be the same player now, but these are guys you could sit behind, you could learn from, and you could turn to be a great, great franchise and great players down the line.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, in 4 starts, I think Jalen Hurts showed that as much as Wentz has won games, and I mean, if you look at both, obviously, that year before he gets hurt, and if you're going to say that ACL completely changed him, I get that. But if you're going to say, if you're going to tell me that he didn't at least do something somewhat impressive that 2019-2020 season, I think you're wrong. I think he was pretty mediocre a lot of the season, but he was good at times. But at the same time, I don't think there's a question to me that say I think you can question the position the Eagles are in, and that's fair, but I don't think you can say we're in a worse position now than we were with Wentz, because I mean, ultimately this team was in cap not good place this season. As it was. And I mean, as much as this is the one year I think I can remember where this is actually a market that's more ideal for the buyers just because of the COVID season, the lowered salary cap. It's going to be interesting, but I mean, there's 3, I think, wide receiver ones in this free agency class in Chris Godwin, Kenny Golladay, and Allen Robinson, who I think at least 2 of them, if I had to guess, are going to leave their teams. I mean, I think that'd be my guess. Sorry, I have an alarm going off here. Sorry.
You're good.
But I think that's the one frustrating part. But if I just really don't see how this is like a bad thing. I mean, you have the 6th pick, you have obviously like all of our day 2 picks and another one from the Colts. I think we have a decent amount of comp picks. I'm not sure, but ultimately this is really good draft capital to fill needs that we definitely have. And I think I can go back and forth. I'm always going to defend Howie. Maybe not as much drafting, but with his cap wizardry and how he's done as a rebuilding team. But I ultimately do think he's going to draft pretty well. I don't think he's going to draft necessarily perfectly where it's like, yes, we missed on the JJ Arcega-Whiteside pick. I'm not going to tell you that he's better than DK Metcalf, obviously, but I do think he's going to draft well. And if you look at the teams that have really been consistent as really good teams for the last 10 or 15 years, which is obviously few and far between, like had the Patriots just drafted studs every draft? No, I think it's more about their talent development personally than really hitting on every single pick. I mean, you look at their first round picks, they're generally trading out or picking in the back of the first, but still they're taking guys like N'Keal Harry, Danny Shelton. I mean, I can't even name some of these guys. They've really missed a lot, and so have we. And that's not, obviously you'd rather hit on those types of picks, but I don't think that's what makes you a good organization is hitting on every single pick.
Well, now looking on the other side of this trade, the Indianapolis Colts, obviously Carson Wentz going to be the starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. I believe he's under contract for 4 or so more seasons. I'm going to start with you, Mac. What's your outlook on the Colts right now? How do you view them right now? And, what do you think they should do for the rest of the offseason to really position themselves to be a potential Super Bowl contender even?
Yeah, a great team this year, had high hopes. And almost even got that playoff win versus the Bills. We all know how that ended up, but this team has a lot to look forward to in the future. And right away, right when Philip Rivers retired, Wentz was the guy. That was the guy that they wanted. Everyone knew that's who they had to sign or trade for, that is. They trade for him, and they're reuniting Wentz with Frank Reich. And I think that's the key here. You're looking at Wentz and how he's played, and there's always been that conversation. Goff, Wentz, stack. Who's better those first few years? And once Frank Reich left, it kind of seemed like that kind of dropped. These guys have kind of found a position in their rankings from one another. And once that's really when you kind of saw his drop off and the question marks started to pop up once Frank Reich left. He left, and now he's the coach of the Colts, and he is reuniting with him. And I think that's going to re-spark his talent and get him back to hopefully an MVP form that he once was at. And I think I'm a believer in these players, if they showed that they had the talent to be great and it wasn't just the help around them, I think they still have it in them, and you just have to pull it out of them no matter where it is. They still have it in them. They were once that, and they definitely could be that again, like the 2016 Derek Carr. I think he has that somewhere in him. Wentz, I believe he does have his MVP form somewhere in him. So the Colts are going to hope to bring that out of him. You're going to have guys like T.Y. Hilton, who's an unrestricted free agent. You're going to hope you can bring him back, but you also have some key young guys on the outside, Michael Pittman, and then the running attack, really, Jonathan Taylor, Marlon Mack. These guys have been studs, and Jonathan Taylor is only on the peak. He's only rising right now. He had his 200-yard rushing game in the end of the season. He finished off strong. So I think that's going to benefit Wentz. He's not going to have to keep the ball in his hands. He's not going to be the one that has to make these plays. You give it to Jonathan Taylor and some of these guys on the outside to help him out. But I think the real key for this team and the future of their offense is that offensive line. As I said, they gave up 19 sacks last year. The Eagles gave up 65. That's going to be the key. And Wentz, we know, injury prone. He gets a lot of injuries. He gets hurt a lot. This team, I think that's going to really help him out. A great offensive line to protect him, avoid contact. And that's something that really should be able to spark his future and spark a greatness in him once again. Once the injuries pile up, I think not only does it take a toll on your body, it takes a toll on you mentally. And once he starts getting to the rhythm, I think he's a guy that will speed up, get hot, and lead the Colts offense to a really high-powered offense and high-scoring offense.
Yeah, Dev, what do you think about that?
I mean, I've rooted for Frank Reich since he's been with the Colts. I loved Andrew Luck. I've always had a sort of soft place in my heart for the Colts. For whatever reason, I guess especially the last few years, I was sad to see Luck retire because I really think Reich and him and that line could have built something special. And I think, I mean, you look at Wentz and Luck. Not to say Wentz has ever been a Luck caliber quarterback, but I mean, Luck, he just had that huge arm. He was huge. He was athletic. He could, make these reads. I mean, I think that's what the goal is for Wentz. Obviously, it's a high standard to live up to be Luck level. But I mean, that's the goal is to have a guy like Andrew Luck who you want to be in your building for the next 10 years, obviously, like the Eagles did. And it falls on him. I mean, there's some holes. I think they need a left tackle now that Costanza retired, but I think the number one priority actually has to be a true alpha receiver, the true X receiver, guy that creates separation, can deal with contested catches, he can go deep. I think Allen Robinson and Chris Godwin really do have to be priorities. Kenny Galladay and Juju and Jay Crowder, if he becomes available, can be good options as well. I think TY is still a good deep threat. I might be wrong on that one, but ultimately, like you said, I mean, 19 sacks with the 39-year-old Phillip Rivers is incredibly impressive. They were really decimated too on that line at times. I mean, Chaz Green was starting at left tackle. They had the guy who was who played on 2 teams in the playoffs. I'm forgetting his name. I think he got legitimate action. He was on their practice squad, and then the Packers signed him, something like that. Regardless, I mean, they did a good job. Reich is a really, really good play caller and designer. That's been clear. The run game, like you said, is strong. The defense played incredibly well. So I think it's on Wentz, honestly, and I think he can do it. But I ultimately can see a world where Carson Wentz is the downfall of that team. I guess the way I see it is I could see him being a Jared Goff type quarterback, where it's like the team's good, he looks okay, but you kind of know he's limited and kind of sucks. I could see it being a complete disaster just based off how he played last season. And I mean, ultimately, what do you take? 53 sacks in 12 games, and by no means was this line good, but he also, I would say about 15 of those or 20 of those are on him, which is pretty crazy considering the fact, again, Phillip Rivers only took 19 sacks last year and he moves about at a snail's pace. So, I mean, honestly, I can see this going badly, or I mean, this is what you do. If Wentz is a franchise quarterback, and even if you're giving up a first round pick, it's obviously worth it. There's no questioning that. But this is a risk. I mean, there's a world where he doesn't work out. It's not going to be incredibly easy to get out of the contract. It's not going to be as hard as it was for us. They're definitely not going to get capital back, because if the one guy he was successful with, when everyone knows they have talent enough around him at least, and if he doesn't work out, then I mean, honestly, I'm rooting for Carson. I'm not just saying that. I do want him to succeed, but I don't really know what his future is at that point. And that can be a really tough spot for the Colts, who right now, I mean, going into this offseason, no matter what you think of Wentz, they're in a really, really good spot. Young, talented roster, cap space, coaching, GM that's been really successful. So I think it's a big risk, but if you end up becoming a contender, it's 100% worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys covered it kind of well, so I'll just kind of give my final thoughts before we wrap this up. I agree. I think, it's a huge risk on the Colts part, but it clearly shows Frank Reich's confidence in Carson Wentz, that they're basically willing to give up a first round pick. And I think, with the condition, that it is, I think they're assuming that, if he is playing more than 75% of the snaps, that, I think Frank Reich believes that, if he's healthy, that he will be playing good. And I think the key is going to be that O-line. They're going to protect him. They're going to give him time. He's not going to be, sacked as much as he is. I'm looking at the stats right now. He's been sacked 28 or more times every year in his career so far. And some of those years he started 11, 12, 13 games. So he's been sacked a ton in his career. So going to the Colts, I think he's going to get a chance. Fresh start. He's going to be back with the offensive coordinator. He's now the head coach there, obviously, that, brought him up, that, took him in his MVP season. And, I think they've got a really good chance to have some success there. They've got the weapons. I agree with Mac and you, Devin, that, I think there's still one more receiver that they need. They need kind of that true number one there, but they still have their first round pick, I believe, this year. I could be mistaken, but I believe they do have it. So they're going to have, they still have draft capital. They're still going to be, drafting young talent. And, look at last year, they didn't have a first round pick, and they got Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman in the second round. So expect this team to find those hidden gems. They've done it in the past. They've with Darius Leonard. I mean, there's a ton of guys you can look at. So it's a risk. We'll see what happens. I mean, maybe they bring in another young quarterback just in case, it's a total disaster. But I think it's the Carson Wentz show in Indianapolis, and we'll see what happens. It sure seems like it's going to be an interesting season. And but overall, I'd say a good trade for both teams and what they're looking to do. I think it made sense, and ultimately that, I'm glad that they both got it done, because I think it'll be better for the NFL in the long run that this deal happened for the Eagles and also for the Colts, who are trying to win a Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also bringing this up, I think something that's going to be special for the Colts and Carson Wentz is, we know Wentz, it's kind of a team that his mentality has kind of been a factor. He gets down, and especially after the drafting of Jalen Hurts, I mean, his mentality was kind of in question. You saw things about his leadership in question. And I think this trade is going to be able to re-spark and reignite really the fire in him to go out there and play well. I really do think that some of these small things that a quarterback shouldn't be affected by really mentally, they do affect him. And this trade really could turn that mentality around. And that could have been a reason for his downfall in the past few seasons.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Rodgers, there was no, I mean, you can see that as a sign of disrespect that they drafted Jordan Love in the first round last year. And instead of getting all down on himself and having a pretty disastrous season, he went out and won the MVP and said, you guys are wrong, not, oh, wait, why are they drafting a quarterback type thing? And I think that's ultimately part of it with Wentz. I think over the last 4 years, even given the games he's missed and been benched in, I think he has the most dropped interceptions, the most fumbles lost for anyone. And I think maybe the most turnover worthy plays. I'm not exactly sure. I was trying to look at some of the stats, but it's definitely been an issue with fumbles and dropped interceptions, which don't go, because, if you have a good game and throw an interception, that might just be seen as a negative. But if you have a bad game, but you have 2 dropped interceptions and a lost fumble, but that's not really going to be shown as much. That's 3 turnover worthy plays, but versus 1 where, obviously that can be different. So I think that's almost something that's happened. I think you look at his MVP season, his passing on first and second down, like not in the red zone, was really mediocre at best. And then he was just excellent on third down and in the red zone. And you can't take that away from him, but you can get down like to 3rd and 19 and make a great play. And that's just not something you can rely on, especially since he's lost his step since that ACL. So I'd honestly be worried if I were the Colts. But again, this has huge payout potential because you're ultimately not going to win a Super Bowl with Jacob Eason or Jacoby Brissett in all likelihood. So.
Yep. So everyone, Carson Wentz, now an Indianapolis Colts, and the Eagles got a 3rd rounder and a potential 1st rounder right now, a 2nd rounder. Big trade today. And we're going to wrap things up here. As always, thank you all for watching this episode of OTA Clips. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to follow us all on Instagram. My Instagram is mac.rommel. Griffin's Instagram is
Griffin Senyek.
And Devin's Instagram is
Devin Bernstein _
Make sure to follow us also on our podcast Instagram at Outside the Arena Podcast, and go subscribe to our regular podcast YouTube channel, which is called Outside the Arena. And we will see you all next time.